Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. So excited to be talking about the Sacramento Kings once again in this video. My most recent video, we broke down their offense, how the Zoom offense has so much success, and how Domantas Sabonis is such a key piece of that. And well, a day later, there's a whole bunch of trade rumors now about the Sacramento Kings. And it's funny because in that video I said, look, I still think that there's a way this team could upgrade via trade. If they went out and got one more piece to kind of complement Fox and Sabonis, the Kings could go from a really, really good team to a really, really great team. And I think that, honestly, it's so funny with the timing of everything. If you guys do enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and then hit that notification bell as well. Go give us follows on Twitter. Also, go join the Discord. Links in the description. We've got great moderators in there. And let's talk about the Kings. We're going to look at the rumor here now. According to the Dunk Central and Shams Charania, the Sacramento Kings are expected to be active on the trade market this season. They're going to be involved in every star player. Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, maybe Zach LaVine. And I want to give my kind of initial thoughts on those three players. And I actually have a fourth trade in here as well for a player that is not listed there that I think there's a chance, just maybe, that player becomes available this season for a trade. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that guy as well. He's actually going to be in the last trade of the video. But for these three guys specifically, Pascal Siakam, I think, is an interesting fit. He gives you some of the offensive capabilities as a four-man. He's a pretty good passer for his position. He can put the ball on the deck. He's got one of the best spin moves in the NBA, if not the best spin move in the entire league. And he's really grown as a shooter, decision maker in recent years. Now, at the four, the couple of issues that I have with him. First of all, he's an expiring contract. So how many assets do you have to send out if you're Sacramento? Historically, the Raptors are not very willing to trade their players. We've seen that just in the most recent history with Kyle Lauri, Fred VanVleet. The Raptors have lost a lot of guys in free agency. It's possible that Siakam and OG Anunoby join that list as well this upcoming free agency period. Now, who knows? Maybe the Raptors are able to keep both of them. Last year, they kept Gary Trent Jr., so there is some credit to them there for keeping a couple of their guys, and maybe they're able to do so with Siakam and Anunoby. But if you're the Kings, you have to understand that, hey, trading for Siakam or Anunoby is a little bit of a risk at this point. And because of that, you're going to see the value in this video is a little bit lower than maybe what you'd expect for those two guys. There's also some issues with trading for a guy like Siakam or LaVine based on how much money they make. The Kings don't have a lot of great contracts to throw in a match. Harrison Barnes is their best example at about $17 million, but that only gets you about halfway to Siakam or LaVine's contract, which means there's some work to be done for them in terms of adding in salaries and trying to get a deal done for a player of Siakam or LaVine's caliber and price point. So we're going to talk about all of those aspects. I do think Anunoby would be awesome in Sacramento. I think Zach LaVine would actually be so fantastic there. And if you guys have been watching the channel, you guys know during my Chicago Bulls trades video, I talked about how I didn't think Zach LaVine's going to be a perfect fit onto a championship caliber team. I think Sacramento is one of the few outliers. You know, people were asking me, should the Detroit Pistons make a move? Should the Charlotte Hornets make a move for LaVine? And my honest response to that is that would be absolutely terrible for those franchises. For the Kings, however, I feel like it would be really good. So let's jump into our first trade here now, and it's for Pascal Siakam with the Toronto Raptors. Here, Siakam goes to Sacramento. He is the lone player going to Sac, and this is one of the issues here that I was referencing with the Kings. In order to match money and get a deal done, they have to send out 5 players in a trade. That is a ton of people going out the door. So if you're Sacramento, you're going from like a 15-man roster down to an 11-man roster making this trade because you're sending out 4 more players than you're receiving back in the deal, and you're also giving up draft compensation. You give up a 2026 first rounder and 3 second rounders spread across 2024 and 2025. It's not that bad in terms of the actual price point, how much you have to give up for an all-NBA caliber player like Pascal Siakam, who is quietly having another really good year, posting nearly 6 assists per game. Siakam is a great player and a guy who I think would really help the Kings. I think he would make their half-court offense even better than it already is. As you guys know, I'm a big believer in what Mike Brown is doing there alongside Jordi Fernandez and some of the other smart minds inside the Kings organization. But for the Raptors, what you're getting back, Harrison Barnes, a player who I would kind of categorize as a below average level starter at this point. He's a starting level player still, but he's not a great starter. In fact, he's kind of a net negative starter a little bit. I would say, and I think that the Kings get like kind of upgrading from Barnes to Siakam would be massive for their organization, although it does come with quite a bit of risk. You also give up Trey Lyles here, a Sacramento Kings fan favorite. He's really, it was probably the most surprising thing of the NBA season last year was that Trey Lyles was not only getting significant minutes, but he was really good in significant minutes last year for the Kings. It just kind of came out of nowhere for me with Trey Lyles, but really impressive season he had last year. You do have to throw him in here because of the money. The Raptors now, you also get Davion Mitchell, and this feels like the type of player that Masai Ujiri would love to have. He loves smaller guards who can defend. He had it with Lauri, had it with Fred VanVleet. Now he's getting it with Davion Mitchell. It just feels like a Toronto-type player, honestly. You get Chris Duarte in here, a former lottery pick for the Indiana Pacers, was traded to Sacramento this offseason for a couple of second-round picks. Doesn't add a ton of value into this trade, but he's another younger player that the Raptors would have control over. And then Kessler Edwards, former second-round pick out of Pepperdine, was selected by the Nets, traded to the Kings for cash when the Nets needed to clear up a roster spot. And honestly, I thought it was a pretty good low risk, high reward move for the Kings, getting a guy like Kessler Edwards in. He hasn't really contributed a ton for them, but he has played. And I think he's a guy who, for the Raptors, depending on what happens with OG Anunoby, like Edwards could get minutes there. Not a ton of minutes, but he could play a little bit. And really for the Raptors here, I think Lyles is a guy you could retrade somewhere into a 3-team deal. Harrison Barnes could probably get rerouted somewhere if the Raptors want to go this way. Davion Mitchell is really the best player that the Raptors are getting for themselves long term. Obviously, his nickname is Off Night, and for a good reason. He's one of the better perimeter defenders in the league. And then you're getting a 2026 first-round pick. That's a pretty strong draft. You're looking at, the Boozer twins are potentially going to be in that draft. Now, for the Kings to execute any of these trades, they would need to, work out an accommodation with the Hawks on the 2024 first-round pick that they owe. They cannot trade 2025. So in order to get something done, they'd have to say to the Hawks, like, look, this pick's going to translate this year anyway. It's likely going to convey to you guys. Can we, move the protections on it so that we can go out and make other moves? And I think the Hawks would be receptive to that, maybe at the cost of a second-round pick or something. But it's something that is possible here. You'll also notice that this trade says failed. The reason why is because Trey Lyles cannot be traded until January 15th. So this is not something we would see now. This is like a 2 months out type of deal, closer to the trade deadline, which is typically when more of the action begins to happen anyway. But this is, I know Kings or Raptors are going to say, oh my gosh, that's not enough for Pascal Siakam. Listen, first of all, I would be surprised if the Raptors trade him, because the Raptors' favorite thing to do is just let talent walk out the door for nothing. That's what Masai Ujiri does all the time. And then secondly, it's an expiring contract. The Kings are actually taking in quite a bit of risk. Look at what Kyrie Irving was traded for. This is significantly more than the Kyrie Irving trade because Siakam's a more reliable player and I think a little bit safer of a trade option. But for the Kings, who are playing really well, they don't want to risk 3-4 first-round picks for a guy on an expiring contract. That's just not how this is going to work. So let's transfer over to OG Anunoby now, and this is where the money becomes a little bit easier. Still a deal between the Kings and Raptors, but since Anunoby only makes $18.6 million this year, he has a player option for next year. He will certainly opt out of that. Anunoby works really well, and the Raptors here get a couple of different things. You can maybe argue Davion Mitchell should still be in this trade. I think there's an argument for that, but you actually get 2 first-round picks, and I think the reason for that is Anunoby's going to have a little bit of a wider market than Siakam. One, because of his price point. He's cheaper, and secondly, the Kings are giving up less players here. It's only a 2-for-1, so I think the Kings would be willing to throw in an extra draft asset because they're able to keep some of their other pieces. Colby Jones, a guy they took at pick 37, I believe, in this most recent draft, he can play. He's a good player. He would instantly get minutes for the Raptors. I really believe in Colby Jones. He's a really good cutter, smart player, can handle the ball a bit, can create his own shot. I think he's good. Harrison Barnes still goes in this deal. He's the money matcher here. And really the Kings are looking at this and saying, we're upgrading from Harrison Barnes to OG Anunoby. The cost is Colby Jones and 2 first-round picks. It's a pretty steep price, honestly, but one that's worth doing. Now, I know Raptors fans are going to say, oh my gosh, OG Anunoby's worth 3 or 4 first-round picks. Yeah, that's what the reported offers were last year. Masai Ujiri turned them down, is my understanding of it. And now, guess what? He doesn't have 2 years of team control. He has, by the trade deadline, 2 months of team control. It's a significantly different circumstance, and I know Raptors fans will not understand it. You guys are going to be able to see down in the comment section Raptors fans being annoyed. That's nothing new, okay? OG Anunoby probably doesn't get traded. if I had to guess, because teams are going to be a little bit more hesitant to trade for an expiring contract when teams like the Pacers are going to have cap space this offseason. So, I mean, a deal for Anunoby is risky. I think really risky, even more risky than a Pascal Siakam trade, honestly, because you probably have to give up a little bit more in terms of draft comp. And I think there's a bigger flight risk with Anunoby to a team like the Indiana Pacers, or, you know, another mystery team, maybe like the Detroit Pistons, if they wanted to go in and offer a ton of money. And there's going to be teams that have pathways to getting a guy like Anunoby in the building. And that's a real risk for any team trading for him, especially the Sacramento Kings giving up this type of compensation. Going into our trade with the Bulls, and again, we kind of run into the same issue here that we had earlier. Trey Lyles on that salary increase recently signed restriction. This deal cannot be made until January 15th, just like the Siakam deal, okay? Secondly here, the Bulls are getting a ton for LaVine. This is about as good as you could possibly do in a trade for Zach LaVine at this point. In my opinion, this is the best offer that they potentially will receive. Harrison Barnes, who I would assume they would look to reroute. Trey Lyles, who they would look to reroute. Davion Mitchell, probably an actual core piece for them, although they do have Javon Carter and Kobe White, so maybe not. Davion Mitchell could maybe get rerouted. Chris Duarte, I think, could fit in on the wing there. I think Kobe Jones could fit in on the wing, and Kessler Edwards could fit in on the wing. I think the one thing about the Bulls that makes this trade really beautiful, their team's kind of old, and they don't have a lot of young players that I trust in. Like Patrick Williams, I still think there's something there, although we haven't really ever seen it consistently. It's been like flashes for the last 4 years. If I ever saw it consistently, I'd put a lot of stock in it. Right now, I don't have a ton of stock invested there, but I would say that, like, he's still something. There's a role for him in the NBA for sure. Kobe White, I believe in. I think he's a good young guard. And, you know, Javon Carter's not young, but he's a good player. For me, like, if you are able to walk away with Davion Mitchell, Chris Duarte, Kobe Jones, Kessler Edwards, like 4 guys in their mid-20s and below, it kind of really reshapes the Bulls' future. And you get a 2026 first. The Bulls already own the Blazers first-round pick with a bunch of protections. So the Bulls are already working with a little bit of a pick surplus themselves. Now they do owe their own 2025 first, protected all the way through 2027 to San Antonio from the DeMar DeRozan trade. So, like, the thing about the Bulls is they still have Vucevic to trade. They'd have DeRozan to trade. They could kind of really strip the whole thing down, recoup some of their assets, and kind of set themselves up with a pretty nice long-term future. This trade would go a long way in setting them up to do so. And the whole reason that all of these players are in here is because the Kings essentially have to give up that many guys to get a $40 million player in the door, which is a problem. Ultimately, I don't think that they're going to be able to get that done. Although I do think LaVine would be really good in Sacramento. I think he would be such a beneficiary of the Kings' offense and the way that they play, the speed that they play with, the amount of times they get up and down the court. And then the Kings' backcourt, really, come playoff time, you would have, I know people are going to be worried about giving up Davion Mitchell, but you have De'Aaron Fox, Zach LaVine, and Malik Monk as your top 3 guards. That is a really great situation, and I think the Kings, getting LaVine, a California kid himself, played his college ball at UCLA, it makes a lot of sense. And I think Sacramento would be really, really good with LaVine, and I think LaVine would have some of the best production of his career there in Sacramento, kind of getting more offense created for him through Sabonis, playing off of Fox a bit more. I think that he would be really set up to succeed there in Sacramento. And funny enough, the Kings actually did sign LaVine to an offer sheet, what feels like so long ago now at this point. The Kings would be a great spot for him to land. Now our last trade, and this one is actually with the Utah Jazz, and it's for a player that not a lot of people are speculating about a ton of trade right now. Now I see it on Twitter every once in a while, but I'm talking like real media, like people who are saying, oh my gosh, this guy's available to be had. Kind of like what Shams is saying here about Anunoby, LaVine, and Siakam. Lauri Markkanen, I think this guy could really help a team. Right now, I think he's really overtasked in Utah. I think they're asking him to do too much. Now, he's been really productive, and he's not the reason that they're losing. But I think that just naturally, when Lauri Markkanen's your best player, you kind of have a lower ceiling on your team. You're not going to win 50 games in the Western Conference, and that's okay. That's not at all discrediting Lauri Markkanen. It's just kind of pointing to the fact that the Jazz are not trying to win right now, and that they've taken the rebuild approach. And I think it's really been a smart decision for them. I think that the long-term direction of their franchise is going to be improved. But nonetheless here, with Lauri Markkanen going to Sacramento, I think he's a really great 4 next to Sabonis. And I think he's a significant upgrade from Barnes. You're going from, again, a below-average starter to an all-star level player here. in Lauri Markkanen. I think for the Sacramento Kings, that alone is worth 2 first-round picks, especially given the fact that he's cheap, his contract is not that expensive, and he's a player that I think really does fit. He can stretch the floor, play on the perimeter when Sabonis is on the court, but he also is versatile enough to fit next to guys like Keegan Murray and some of the other big man options, Trey Lyles as well. I think that really the Kings, this is one of the best options for them because he's affordable at $17 million. Harrison Barnes is almost a straight-up money match, which is super important when you're actually discussing trades and kind of the mechanisms in the CBA on how to get a deal done. That's one of the most important things. And giving up 2 first-round picks, it might seem like a pretty steep price point. Again, you have to talk to Atlanta, work out your future protections on the pick that they owe this year to get something like this done. But for Sacramento, Markkanen is lengthy enough, big enough to help on your backline defense. He can protect the rim a little bit for you from the power forward spot, and I think his offensive game fits really well into what the Kings need next to Sabonis and Fox. I think, honestly, out of all of these trades, even though Siakam's a really great player, and Anunoby's fantastic, and LaVine, I think, would be really good there, I think this is the trade that makes the most sense for them. The Jazz are probably the most willing to give up on a player right now when it comes to receiving draft picks. And I'm sure the Jazz would look at it and say, hey, we can retrade Harrison Barnes, maybe get a low-end first for him, or at least a bevy of second-rounders, or maybe a far-out future first, which would help the Jazz, too, getting a deal done. Is kind of looking at how they could reroute Harrison Barnes somewhere. You get 2 more first-round picks in the door. The Jazz would love to continue adding picks to their cabinet. And I think when it comes to comparing, Danny Ainge and Masai Ujiri, one of them's way more willing to get a deal done, and it's not Ujiri in Toronto. So even though Anunoby's a fantastic player, even though Siakam's an all-NBA caliber guy, it doesn't mean the Kings are going to really realistically be able to get those guys on expiring contracts even, because that's the way Ujiri operates. I think that Danny Ainge is going to be way more willing to work with Monty McNair on getting a deal done, and because of that, I think that the Kings should target Lauri Markkanen out of all of these players. You don't have to send out way more people. And I think Markkanen does actually really fit into their roster construction and their offense right now. And I think he also bolsters their defense a little bit, which is really important. And I think a big reason why a trade for Lauri Markkanen does make a ton of sense right now for the Sacramento Kings. Hopefully you guys did enjoy today's video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more, hit that notification bell. Let me know down in the comment section below what player you think the Sacramento Kings should trade for, who's on your short list of targets for them, and which of these trades in the video did you think was the best? Did you like the deals with the Raptors? Did you like the deal with the Bulls? Or did you really like the deal with the Utah Jazz? Let me know down below. Thanks again so much, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.